Hi, this is Stan. Welcome back to the Crow's Nest Railroad in part 3 of our rebuild of the American 440 15-inch gauge steam locomotive. Hope you'll join me. Well, as you can see, we're here in the shop today, and I just want to mention that this is not the only progress being made on this locomotive. I'm just doing one small part right now, and that is trying to restore some of the wood on the cab and on the running boards, and that's what we're going to look at today. In fact, the running boards, you can see them here. They go underneath the cab in the back, and they run all the way down along either side of the boiler. They were removed. There were some pieces that were broken and cracked, and they need to be repaired, and then the finish needs to be updated. So we're going to get started on that here on part 3. Got everything set up on the sawhorses, so let's get busy. Here's a look at the two running boards. Now, I wasn't there when these were pulled off the locomotive, but in checking with Bob and looking at the pictures, kind of get the idea of what's going on. So this goes down the fireman's side, or the left side of the locomotive. This running board goes down the right hand side, or the starboard side. This is the cutout for the pump that you can see, and you can see the discoloration here. This is where the cab will sit, and that's the smoke box way up front. And way up front, that's the front. So this is the rear of the locomotive here. This piece was broken off of this section here, but this piece is already starting to come unglued here. I'm not terribly surprised by that, because over the years wood can dry out and crack, and especially here in the desert, things dry out pretty quick. But I also notice that there is a similar, these were laminated on, there's a similar lamination on the inside of both of the boards down at the front end as well. And up front here, you can see this is delaminating. This whole extra strip was tacked on the side. I don't think I'm going to tear this apart. I'm going to try and force some glue in this joint and reclamp it and see how well that holds. Back here, I think what I'm going to have to do, this piece was broken free, so I've been sort of trying to clean the edge a little bit. This piece is probably only 30% glued on, so I think what we'll do, let's see if we can put a tool in there and pop this the rest of the way out so that we can position it and see if we can get it glued on. Boy, you know, you just hate to pry something loose, but you take a chance on splitting it. But you can see just this is not glued, and it's shifted slightly. It's not lined up at both ends. So I've got a couple of scrapers coming in on both ends. All right, it looks to me like there's two nails still holding this in. One right here and one right there. So I've got to be careful. This nail here I was able to cut with a hacksaw. So now I can rotate this piece, and we'll see if we can wiggle it safely out. There we go. All right, that's off. I'm going to take a pencil and just mark it so I don't get confused as to which piece goes where. And you know, when you're working with a bit of history, you want to be extra careful. You just hate to go in
with a Sawzall and just make a mess of everything. So we'll try and be as careful as we can. Well, that was a little nerve-wracking, but we got it apart okay. Now I'm going to have to decide, do I want to put any mechanical reinforcement on that joint, or do I want to take some Titebond 3 and glue it up? I'm going to sand these down and put some UV protection finish on them, but I've got to decide what I want to do on these pieces. Here you can see the remnants of a wood screw. Here, this looks like a nail or a small brad. So what I'm going to do for this one, I've got a small finishing nail. I'm going to flatten the tip on this and see if we can drive this pin out. Good. There's our little finish nail that was pinned in there. Whoop, whacked the camera on that one. And there's the nail that we used to drive it out. Alrighty, now onto the screw. This one's going to be a little more difficult. This is a wood screw, and it looks like when they did a bevel, when they ground a bevel on this wood here, they just ground into the top of the screw itself. So the top of the screw is gone, but the metal is carved out. I'm going to see if I can drill a hole in that. I might not be able to extract this, but let me try and drill into that. So I was able to drill out the head of the screw, which was beveled and didn't have any slots for any tools in there, screwdrivers of any kind. So I drilled that out, and that allows me to get enough torque on the little bit of the screw that was sticking out that I think I can extract the screw, keep screwing it on through the wood and out the bottom here. Okay, there's the remnants of that wood screw. Well, for the bottom part of the screw, I was able to cut a slit in the screw itself with a little Dremel, and I think I can work that and back that screw out. Whew, there we go. Okay, both pieces of the screw are gone, and the only piece of metal left is just that tiny little nail or pin that's in there, and that's so small I'm not going to worry about it. I drove it down in there, and I think that'll be good enough.
Well, it's a new morning. Let's take a look at our progress so far.
Well, we've got these two pieces on the running boards that we have to attach back. Remember, one of them was completely off, that one, and this one was just hanging on by a metal pin and a screw, and we were able to get most of the metal out of the way. So I had thought about maybe splining these. That's where you cut a groove and then put a piece of material like a real thin plywood or whatever, join them together. But I think instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of these 1/4-inch dowels. I'm going to dowel this together rather than introducing any more metal into that joint. It's very possible this will have to be repaired again in the future, so let's get busy and line up these pieces and mark where we want the dowels to go. So I marked as close to perpendicular as I could where I'm going to drill out for the dowels. And we're going to use this top edge as our reference edge. I'm going to start with the panel because it'll be a little bit easier to drill these dowel holes here, and there's no restriction as far as depth. When I get to the little slender piece, I'm going to have to be careful not to go too far. All right, now let's drill out the small piece. And again, I'm going to have to be careful when it gets really slender about not going too far deep in. And now that I don't need this necessarily smooth edge anymore, I'm going to take my Dremel tool and I'm going to carve it up all along here, kind of down through the center. And that'll again give a little bit of mechanical purchase for the glue rather than just a flat butt joint. Okay, just some grooves that the glue can find itself in, and again help to register those two pieces and create just a little bit more surface for the glue to attach. Well, let's do the other piece. I'll get it doweled and then we can start our glue up. Well, there's one piece of it. I'm going to take my time and not glue too many things at once. So I got it all clamped up and glued, and now just wait. And here's the repair on the second board. And that small split on the front end of the right-hand running board. Well, another beautiful morning here in the desert, out in the driveway on the sawhorses with these running boards, and time to hit them with a belt sander. But let's be careful. You never want to stop a belt sander. It does too much work. Okay, we're down to about 120 grit. I think what I'm going to do now is go by hand with some 220 grit. So you can see this piece here was our repair, as was this piece over here. And then this is the piece that we just tried to stretch the wood out a bit and get some glue down in the joint and put it back together again. So this, as you remember, is that point where the piece that we glued on came right to a razor sharp point. So that's always a difficult spot for joinery. So I used a little bit of a hand plane and sandpaper to make sure that that edge is smooth and it won't catch. All right, all sanded up and ready for some varnish, which I'll do later after all the dust calms down in the garage, and I'll do that indoors. But here's the two major repairs we did. So it's amazing how much different some woods look dry versus with a finish on it. I'm just going to put a little water on this and you'll see what I mean. You kind of get a hint of what the finish is going to look like. See that? Beautiful. Of course, there's no shine to it right now. That's just water. You can see how that darkens up. Looks beautiful and pulls the grain and the figure out in the wood.
Alright, the bottoms are done. These are the parts that no one will ever see except the crew working on the locomotive. So let's get these flipped over now and I'll start working on the tops, the show side.
And just for the record, I'm using Old Masters Spar Marine Varnish Semi-Gloss. I'm not cutting it, I am filtering it, but it's just going on with a brush, full strength.
Well, I better wrap it up for now. You get the picture. I've got a few more coats of finish to put on. I only get one coat per day. It's an oil-based finish, so I have to put it on, wait overnight, do a little sanding, and then add another coat. So for the rest of the week, I'll be busy on that. Thank you so much for watching. I will put a couple links down below so that you can keep up to date on the Saguaro Central. Put a link for their website as well as for their Facebook page. Really appreciate you hanging with me, especially all the way to the end of this video. So you're a real trooper. I'll see you right here next time on the Crow's Nest Railroad.